saw people return right away. The use of the gymnasium hasn't been as heavy, and that's why we haven't really been open until 10 o'clock like we traditionally have been. Um, so, if normal returns by next fall or winter, I'm hoping that, some things will return. Right now, I have no expectations that we'll be able to do any type of indoor leagues. Um, so, I mean, that's why a lot of my budget asks have been reduced based on the fact that I'm not thinking I'm going to be able to offer a lot of the stuff that we traditionally offer. So, um, this is my best guess estimate that I, trying to be fair with that, hope we can make it. Hopefully, if anything, it's a smidge on the conservative side, but I didn't want to promise something that I knew I couldn't deliver. So that's why you'll see things are down based on just that uncertainty. Um, with last year, we had some issues with the pool getting it open. The pool's only one curveball away from being shut down for months or weeks. So, and we've been restricted from offering two of our most popular programs, which is Open Swim and Family Swim, just because again of the COVID. Um, so yeah, if there's any specific questions that anyone has regarding our revenue, I'll give you my best answer.
I think you explained it.
Okay. Then yeah. So going on to our expenses. So I'm sure you guys have known or knew that I lost. I lost my assistant director. I've been working without one for the last 2 months. I have an internal posting with one really strong candidate. And what I'm thinking is we used to have an assistant director and a lead attendant. So kind of think of that in the military terms, like one's a commissioned officer and the other's a non-commissioned officer. What I'm thinking about doing is combining them and having a little less office time for the assistant director and putting them more on the floor in an effort to shave off a position. And then I just have, my two full-time attendants. One is a daytime person, and then ideally, if we can find another one, that would be an evening person, preferably an adult. And then the part-timers are kind of like the fill in the pieces. And when you see three part-time attendants, it isn't like usually a 25-hour a week gig like you might traditionally think a part-time gig is. It's hey, I got a kid that's wrestling and band and and they're probably averaging more like 10 to 12 hours a week. So it's not as many people as you'd think, because a lot of the kids in this community that are seeking employment are usually busy in many other parts. A little bit last year to help us out. And so, as a cost savings move, we've kind of eliminated that position. Overtime's pretty much, just what it is. And so that's pretty much the staffing situation. Um, if there's any questions, I'll take them before I fill on to the actual line items. Okay, hearing nothing. So knock on wood, my old faithful pickup truck has still some life in her, and so we're hoping that it doesn't cost us that much to operate her, or keep her in good running shape. Insurance is what it is. Uh, Referees have come down based on the fact that I'm not sure if we're going to be able to offer leagues. Uh, Communications, that's not the line item I have control over. Same with the network, dues, memberships, training, office supplies, operating costs, resale supplies. We do have a vending machine. It's pretty popular. So just keep that stocked. Uh, cut the youth program supplies in half. I'm hoping next year that we'll be able to start offering after school programs again. Um, Obviously, there's money in there for fee waivers because that'd be great. If we're giving fee waivers, that means that we're hosting events again. So that's a good sign that things are returning to normal. The rest is supplies. I'd like to continue to bring up our cardio tech to do annual servicing on our cardio equipment and some of our weight stations. Um, Got to get the fire inspection. Can't do anything about that. And I guess we are hoping to realize some cost savings in our electrical by replacing our light fixtures in the gymnasium with LED lights. And utilities, and then yes, already mentioned treadmill or elliptical. I haven't decided yet. It'll be based on what I have to potentially retire after a year of use. So the good news is we get a little longer use out of them based on the fact that I try to bring up a tech annually to help service them so that we can keep them in usable shape as long as we can. But sometimes we hit a wall where we can't get parts and components anymore because once they go to a new treadmill, it's next to impossible to get parts on the old ones because the manufacturers aren't really producing them anymore. So then usually we have to go to kind of like a secondhand vendor that'll maybe buy up supplies or get some stuff from other gyms when they close down or whatever. Anyone have any specific questions about line items for any of the things I just discussed?
They employ a full-time janitor?
Yeah, well, like I said, it's a combo. So the setup I have now is our janitor comes in, and I have a little bit of flexibility just because I have to. But so the janitor comes in at 11 o'clock at night. I'm sorry. Yeah, she comes in at 11 o'clock at night, and she's the janitor until 5:30, and then she also opens because that used to be a really difficult slot to fill a 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. shift. So about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I just happened to have a janitor that said, "Hey, I could just open too," and I was like, "Hey, that's a great idea." So now that I only have to have an attendant come in at 8 o'clock, actually 7 o'clock, because my janitor is also a TSA agent, so she used to work midnight to 8, but she has requested that we move her back an hour because she has to be to work earlier because the flight came in earlier. I'm thinking there's a potential that when the flights change again May 20th and the flight only leaves out here at 1, that she might go back to a midnight to 8 shift. Lord knows that'd be easier for the rest of us because I have to come in 2 of those mornings at 7, and that's, yeah, it's rough. She doesn't. She's a machine.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure she's a robot because she also sometimes works a job at the hospital too. But yeah, she's thorough in her duties, and she just I don't know. Some people are just wired to work, I guess. she's good. I really like her. In fact, her son came up and he's working multiple jobs as well, and they're actually looking to purchase a house. She just told me so. I guess they like Nome enough that they'd like to stay. So. Yeah, and she's been with us a couple years, but she's been with TSA even a little bit longer. So, anyway,
Cool.
yeah. So pool. Did you say cool or pool?
Cool.
Okay, good. Pool. We don't have a manager. That's me. Even though none of my salary is allocated to that line item. Lifeguards. Yeah. I'm fortunate I lost my one lead lifeguard. He has left Nome, and my other lead lifeguard, Melissa, is amazing. She's very passionate about the pool, and she also runs the swim teams. And then lifeguards, yeah, as we get them 1, 2s, and 3s. We got a clerical assistant with the hoping that we'll pick things back up again and need an extra set of hands. So that's the salaries. They're pretty simple. As far as contract services, I have to send out a water sample monthly to get tested to make sure don't have some yucky things in it. Heterotropic plate count and total coliform are the two things we need to get tested. Not that you probably know that. Communications, that's for our phone. Melissa also is first aid lifeguard and certified, so she needs to get typically recertified. So, and then when our guards need to get recertified, there's a cost to that, which we typically pick up. Office supplies, we do need a couple pens and pencils to do our job. Operating supplies, 4,500, which is salt and muriatic acid. Obviously, if at some point we go to a traditional chlorine feed system, you could just scratch salt and add chlorine. Resale supplies, there's a steady demand for goggles, which we sell. Pool lane lines, our lane lines get heavy use and they're starting to chip away, so we're probably due to start thinking about replacing them. And the $10,000 is kind of a placeholder for the new disinfection system, but that's not nearly adequate, but it's a placeholder. And then I believe same with the $15,000 down machinery and equipment. The only thing that I know for sure is I haven't had a washer or dryer die in a couple of years, so that means probably one of them is due to die. So I'll probably need to replace that, and that's not a huge expense. So the $25,000 there, I think, is some wishful thinking for the new disinfection system, but yeah, that's pretty much a small fraction of what the verbal quote that I got was.
Glenn, I had the school guys come in today to just talk about their DTC system, and we're going to enter into an agreement with the school to put a receiver on the pool building for our electric meter read things, which means we're bringing fiber cable into the pool, which means you guys will be able to get onto the city network.
Awesome. Great.
As a result. But Mortensen mentioned something about the MOU that you're working on, and are there any costs associated with that that aren't in your?
The MOU isn't anywhere ready to be completed.
Okay.
The big issue for them, their concern was the internet, and if we were going to essentially put like a SCADA system in, which is what we're talking about, and that's ability for Chip or anybody to work from home and access if they get an alarm in the pool and to deal with that. You have SCADAs at your pump stations and all that. This is just taking it to a pool concept. So that was probably if there was going to be a big cost. And then the other cost, frankly, gets into what Chip has been working on with John Mortensen and Bob Walker. And I got the sense is you'd rather delay that discussion because it is going to be we're not even talking about doing the gutters. We're talking about doing something else, and that's going to be $300,000 range.
Okay, well, if there aren't questions on this operating budget, will you guys spend another 15, 20 minutes on the other stuff, or do you want to do it another night?
7:30 is when I'm leaving.
Okay.
I can talk fast if I'm part of
Sure.
it.
Let's go ahead then and
All right. So the ideal next step. Okay. Well, I was gonna say is that everyone's thoughts. Can I go quick?
The rest of these guys, I'm just one person.
Okay. So in a nutshell, I'll talk fast, which I always do anyway. I had a meeting with John and Bob about 2 weeks ago to discuss his research into options for switching back to a traditional chlorine feed disinfection system. He ended up going up with two options. One, he did some research because he saw that we got our calcium hypochlorite through through NJU in a granular form in 100-pound buckets. He did research and found that there was only one company that made a chlorine feed system that took granular cal hypo, and that was a company out of Germany. They have high regards, but ultimately we decided that that probably wouldn't be best because of parts and just whatever. So the second was another traditional chlorine feed system. However, this one was fed with essentially chlorine discs, which also come in buckets. And so if we went that route, that's pretty much the standard route that most pools in the lower 48 use. It's very easy. I mean, think of it like a smoker or whatever. I mean, it's literally in a hopper, and as it needs it, it feeds it in. If it doesn't need it, it won't. So the price tag for the traditional chlorine feed system with the chlorine discs or pucks, additional plumbing and new pipe installation to take the new system and to pretty much replace all the piping that the pool water goes down to into the pool, because we've already had half replaced, to replace from the sand filters on into the new disinfection system to the secondary disinfection system, and then back into the pool, plus the control panel to operate that is $200,000. Now, there is also an additional auxiliary component that we should have, and it's pretty standard with pools. It's called a backup disinfection system. The normal one that's in use in pretty much every other place is an ozone type, and that's an additional $100,000. So altogether, for everything to switch back is $300,000 with the install, the parts, the components. That's his best guess. He doesn't want to go any more specific than that until he signs a contract with us. But normally we have to bid, but he thinks he's got a leg to stand on, as he's the only company in Alaska that does this, and he's looking perhaps for a sole source contract. We've had some discussions with the lawyer to see if this has merit and we could stand on this. The preliminary response was that yes, we could. If we do decide that we want to opt out and bid out, he would only supply us with a rough order of magnitude, because he doesn't, like he said, he doesn't want to do all the work and the research without getting compensated. So that's pretty much in a nutshell where we're at with our options.
And that does not deal with the gutter work. That's another separate issue.
There might be some good news on that. I know we heard numbers like $500,000, $600,000, $7,000. Bob actually has gotten back in contact with me, and because he's had at least one other entity approach him about doing some leak detecting work in their pool, he has said that he is now going to purchase the equipment. So he has offered to come up as well and do a full leak detection checkup on our whole pool. And he said it's quite possible that we might only have to replace sections of the gutter, or we also might find out that we're leaking from other areas. But that was just very recent that happened. I'm kind of working with Nikki a little bit to see if we can afford to make that trip happen. So there might be some good news in that we don't have to throw that much money at it to fix it. But honestly, I think the priority would be to make sure we get rid of what it is that's corroding our gutters and infrastructure, because we might be putting the cart before the horse. So
we would be doing Walker would be having doing testing to try to determine where we're losing water.
Yeah. Or it's double worse. It's just the whole thing's leaking.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, so
Gutters, the pool, everything.
the good news is it might not be that bad, or it might. I don't know. But a couple months ago, when I was asked to do a quick story with the paper, kind of giving an update when we're open, I got a cold email out of the blue from Bob McGuire, who I believe he was Nancy's brother, but he used to be the director of school maintenance from the late 80s through mid 90s, and he must have a very, very good memory, because he went into detail with how the pool was built, constructed, the flaws from the get-go, the shortcuts that were taken, that were common shortcuts that every pool is now paying for. Anyway, he wrote me this big long story of which I passed on to both John and Bob, and so that provided a bunch of insight. I haven't had that type of institutional knowledge available in a long time. And there's even some stuff there that I wasn't even aware of. But he did say that if we are leaking some stuff out of the bottom, that the way the thing is built, that it can take pretty much unlimited water. So at least I'm not worried about coming in someday and seeing some 30-foot sinkhole off. Because trust me, I've had about every nightmare possible of what I mean. I came in one time and saw the pool completely drained of water. I mean, after that, anything can happen. So yeah, so like I said, so those are obviously going to be some big ticket items. I did look for some auxiliary funding sources. Obviously, NSCDC is a common one, but their funding structure, the next available time that they would be considering projects of that size would be their outside entity funding program, which doesn't come due until mid-January of 2022. So, so yeah, so
Just so everyone knows, that's what we're trying to figure out how to approach it. Could we get permission? Would they fund us, after the fact? I've asked Chip to reach out because the ideal time to do this would be August, when the pool normally would be shut down. So we just want to make sure that we're not saying we're going to recommend doing it right away, but this is what we're looking at. And if we can find a way to, at least they would agree to reimburse us, or maybe they'll only agree to reimburse us partially, then you have some options in front of you.
Well, one of the curveballs is that that funding is open to any entity from the region. So there's always lots of hands out to that entity. So, at best we could be cautiously optimistic, but I know that we wouldn't be the only one putting in requests.
Down there in the basement, it's been a while since I went down there with you, but most of the piping has been converted to the plastic.
Half of it has. So from where it comes out of the walls, it goes into the strainers, through the circ pumps, and up to the sand filters has all been replaced. So in the second portion, it would be from the sand filters out to the disinfection system, the auxiliary backup system, the heat add, and then back in. And Bob said that once we replace all that, we have a 30 to 40-year life. And if something heaven forbid would happen, and even if everything would freeze in there, this pipe doesn't burst. So I forget the name of the pipe, but it's pretty much the standard piping for pools.
Yeah, and that's just the thing, when it was switched to the salt thing, I don't know that it stopped any of the degradation in there, but, chlorine, it's giving fumes off down in that room that's very tight, and so corrosion of the piping and any of the equipment in there is just something that will increase, I believe, with going back to chlorine. But
And they don't it's unheard of to do below grade mechanical rooms for that very reason, because they need to be ventilated. And anytime I've ever brought subcontractors up, they're pretty shocked that we still have a bunker style mechanical room, because they always ask how difficult it is to bring the chemicals in, and I say just don't talk about it. Most places they just back the truck up, open the doors, and you're at all your main components.
100-pound buckets.
Yeah, with the winch. Yeah. So he was shocked to find out that we hand winched several 100,000 pounds of sand up there when we cleaned our last filter out. And Bob actually brought a big suction. Well, we got the generator from you guys, and he actually had a big suction thing. And like I said, he was shocked to find out that 4 or 5 of us had actually hand shoveled that and then put it in 5-gallon buckets and then hand did it up with the chain. But it is what it is.
okay, well, not all bad news, but not all good.
COVID money going into the pool?
We're not sure. We're waiting for Treasury.
I know you don't know, but because that's something to keep in the back of mind.
Yeah. And I thought maybe the school might be using some of their funding to do the air handling system, because I'm sure if that more moisture air that we're creating isn't piped out, I'm sure it's causing problems up in their roof. And I've heard complaints that their gym leaks. And I said, well, yeah, it's probably freezing on the inside. And the first warm time in spring, it melts down, just like the rec center used to be about 15 years ago. So, yeah, so I'm hoping, I think the school's optimistic that they'll somehow find a way to pull that off if they can overhaul the air handling system and actually have one that's functioning. They might not have icicles growing out of their rafters.
Yeah, they have a person that's in town doing something for DOT that has some experience from the North Slope on some of these.
Yeah, he actually used to be on their staff for a short time till he went to the US. He's got an HVAC background.
And so we were just talking today about having the people that do our SCADA thing look at theirs too to see if it's not as dire as Jamie made it sound. Not that she was bullshitting us, but she just didn't have the grasp of them.
That's great news that there's potential that we're going to be getting internet, because I've been trying for many, many years, but the school's always been really reluctant because their funding sources are pretty specific that it needs to be educational only. And I tried a couple gray area to get through a couple gray areas, but I guess it's a couple $1 million on the line, so they tended to err on the side of, yeah, we don't really want to do anything to risk this, which I don't blame them, but
Anyway, that will be solved this summer. So.
yay.
All right, any other questions for Chip? All right, sir, thank you.
Awesome.
And Glenn, you have something?
Well, the legislative, it is pretty much the big difference is, Nikki mentioned we moved the vehicle, which was one time called the mayor's vehicle. But usually everybody's using it through the administrative services, so we just decided to move that over into administrative services. Other than that, it's pretty standard.
The somehow what was really the mayor's vehicle ended up at the police department. The little gray car that they have up there, and I don't know how Julie and Tom and all those people finagled that, and we got back one of those old expeditions as a result. There isn't the need to have quote unquote a mayor's vehicle on the deal, but there does need to be the available for access. When we do have people in here, and I didn't see that Glenn included anything for a vehicle for him, but his vehicle is again one of these old things that came from the police department that has been puked on and everything else.
Don't say that, John.
They've cleaned it, but it's not something that when we have people in town. When we have people in town, these old expeditions are not the things we should haul them around in. So you should be looking for, I guess, making a proposal here to get a new vehicle for the city manager, and then that can be shared with the mayor or whoever else needs to.
Well, as you know, when everybody needs a vehicle, I said, okay, come
Right.
down, my keys, I leave my keys.
Yep.
And just grab it and use it during the day.
Right.
You know, I mean, the only, so we try to work around that, and obviously we make sure that when people come in, because there are times when we have every vehicle,
Yep.
we have contractors in, and we've got every vehicle going.
But it didn't sound like from the police department that there were many that they were even releasing with the new ones that they get. It just seems like they keep adding. So I didn't hear anything about hand-me-downs coming.
Well,
Not that we wanted those,
We need
but
to stop that program anyways. Start selling these things and just buying new, because you're just getting junk that's worn out.
Well, of course, it doesn't help when they run up through a wall with one of them.
Well, yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, it's,
right.
Um,
But But
I
anyway,
mean, this is, just so you know, this is very typical in any municipality I've worked. The police get the new ones, and then the rest of the government gets whatever.
Or change them out more often, maybe.
Well, and
Maybe
that-
that's what it is. We're just using them till they're dead, and then we resurrect them and then give them to you.
yeah. Okay, we got 4 minutes. Adam, you
Well, yeah,
brought
I
something
know
else here?
Joe's not here, but
Okay.
I reached out, or they actually Mackenzie reached out to me and Shane, just giving me rate sheets because I wanted to see, because they wanted dozers and loaders and stuff just to see just see what their prices are. And so hopefully the next meeting Joe's here.
Well, and that's the
Because,
plan.
the other thing that Shane with Stampede threw out there was, have we ever looked at contracting out the snow dump? Like, maybe somebody would put an RFP out, and they would, from November 1st to May 1st, it's theirs. They're got their own equipment. Something to think about.
Well,
Just the snow dump or snow?
The snow dump,
Oh,
just the dump, because we don't have a dozer, obviously, that can manage it some part of the year, not all of the part of the year, but.
well, just so, the hospital, I'm gathering for the first time ever, hauled thousands, and I mean thousands of cubic yards of snow to the point where we didn't have the capability of moving it, and then we had to rent from Stampede to move it. And the question was raised, should we start charging? That's something we've never done because, we still have to manage and run the snow dump because we use the dump out, obviously. But we are putting together, we're, just so I'm glad you did, but we're going to get all the rate sheets that we have because it's just not, we have Fagerstrom.
Yeah, I only could get that one.
And board of trade, because we want you to see all the contracts and how much money we've spent this year. Because we're waiting, beating on everybody to get their bills in instead of coming to us at the very end of the year, and that's when we discover how much we owe. It's amazing you have to chase people down to, provide their invoices. Not everybody, some are very good at getting them in. But no, we're trying to take a holistic look at that. And so
When he brought that up, I thought that was it's not necessarily taking away anything because half the time it's hard for Joe to get a dozer operator probably up there because there's so many other things that they're doing. And so yeah, it's something to think about, something to look into. Obviously,
There's a cost there. I mean, we have a cost there as a city. We have a cost there too.
I had a comment on that too, but Jennifer. Oh, okay. One of the things, talking about charging for the snow dump, yeah, we have something, going on there. But I think we've done better with getting people to actually haul snow from some of these places up to the thing, not just dumping it out in the street where we end up having to then go and pick it up and haul it. Some of them may be able to, they're just, it's just the cost of doing business, another component. But I guess it's, if we can encourage them to use the snow dump by making it available at little or no cost, I think we benefit in the long run.
we are still having that problem. I just don't want to think, we're still having people
it's always going to happen.
Yeah.
all over the city. And
Yeah.
The majority of these bigger companies now they're hauling them now, which is good, So it's a thought. Obviously, Shane at Stampede is thinking about it, so I want to reach out and see what.
there wasn't a speck of snow this year at the hospital. Whenever I went up there were no piles. This was the only place in the entire city that I did not see a pile of snow.
106.
A lot of money to put people keep it plowed, right?
So tomorrow or Monday we get the school budget. And so the next time we're scheduled is May 10th, if there is not DOE Okay.
Is the grader broke down?
I don't know that.
Thank you, Nikki and.
You guys
Margaret,
may know more than
No, I
I
don't
do.
know, no, I don't know, a lot of people ask about, say,
Well,
say about the streets or however.
yeah, we are outgrading. We are, we are, I mean, I can tell you, Fourth Street is absolutely coming apart.
That is.
I live, yeah, I know. I was thinking of you because AHFC was complaining about the roads and the drainage and everything else. So we were out there looking at that. Grader has been out, but there's more to be done. And now we have having dust